Right, here we go. 3 o'clock, my time on the dot. Welcome, everybody. My name is Anel de Priya. I will be the stand-in host for Christine Breed today. So you'll see our little faces on the same. Christine is currently lending her expertise in Malawi for the week. So had a quick trip, and I'm honored to be your host for today's session. Welcome to those online today, and also for those that will be watching the recording a bit later. Thank you for joining us. So before we delve into our discussion, let me quickly introduce the IABC to those who are new to it. As the International Association of Business Communicators is a globally renowned professional network dedicated to advancing the practice, understanding, and impact of internal and external communication. So wanted to just share a quick video with you as an introduction.
Just give me a second.
Thank you. Sorry, Natalie, I don't think there's any sound.
I'll try again now.
We are IABC, a global community of communication professionals practicing with integrity and passion. We're diverse. Diverse as the industries and disciplines we work in. With thousands of members on every continent, we're alive with knowledge and experience. We're the voice of communication practice. We use the power of communication to connect people to ideas, to job opportunities, and to other professionals. We spark conversations. We create connection. And we have fun. We're focused on insights and results. Sure, we like cool creative, but it has to stick in the hearts and minds of our audience and provide value to our organization. We're about global best practices that are current and relevant. We live by a code of ethics. We support a global certification program. And we recognize the best of the best around the world. So, what's in it for you? Well, start with our lively and varied networking events, our regional and international conferences, our certification programs, and our award shows. Whether you're an experienced communicator or new to the field, whether you work for a corporation, government, agency, or nonprofit, IABC fits your personality and your professional goals. IABC. We use communication to engage, influence, counsel, and execute. We connect communicators around the world. We are IABC.
Thank you so much. If there's anybody that has any questions about the IABC, you're welcome just to put it in the chat box, and Carlien, our resident expert, as well as Natalie, will be able to assist you with any questions. But then, without any further ado, let me introduce to you our guest speakers for today. Welcome to Carlien Botha Delport. She is now on my left-hand side, hence starting on that end. Welcome, Carlien. Carlien is a communications consultant, an IABC board member, and certified SCMP with the IABC. So today you're going to hear a lot of abbreviations, right? With years of experience in branding, marketing, strategic communication, but her roots, however, lie in development communication. Carlien is going to speak to us today about the role and the growth of development communication, and that in Africa. She's definitely one to speak about going up in Africa and having all those interesting experiences. So welcome, Carlien. Thank you for joining us. Next up is Janine Ward. Janine is a Sub-Sahara region trustee from the International Association for Community Development, the IACD, and also the owner of Space. And she's one of the ladies that has taught me ABCD and a resident guru on the ABCD methodology. She's worked for the last 37 years as a social worker, a qualified social worker, and then also working with communities, small businesses. She's delved into HIV and AIDS education, and our voice today on asset-based citizen-led development. So welcome, Janine. Excited to hear a bit more about all the things that you are doing. Next up, we have Patty Lewis, the head of ESG at GCX, right? Some more abbreviations. GCX is a data analytics and sustainability solution company specializing in ESG, carbon and waste. And she's an expert in ESG with, and something I found very interesting, a Higher Achiever Award from the Chamber of Commerce. Congratulations on that, Kathy. I think that's something to be proud of. So we are going to speak to her today about the world of ESG and sustainability, and how does that all fit into community development and having the corporate voice from this end. So welcome, ladies. I am going to post in our chat for everybody that is online the abbreviation soup that we have tried to communicate to you now. I'm going to just put all the abbreviations for you in the chat to make it a little easier to remember. But if you get stuck, then please post and we'll make it happen, right? So to kick us off today, I want to start with Carlien. Carlien, so let's start unpacking the abbreviations. I think the ones that lies with you is all about social impact, community development, and CSI and CSR. And tell us a bit more about all of these things that you work in. Can everybody hear Carlien? No.
I can hear you. No, sorry, I can't.
Yeah, we can't hear anything. There we go.
Okay, there we go.
There we go. Thank you, Carlien.
Thank you, Anel, and hello, everybody. It's nice to see so many people here today. As a communicator, these kind of this jargon is a nightmare for us. So it's you know what they say about the shoemaker's shoes, who's who's always broken. But yes, when it comes to these kind of things, I think what's really important, and what's really important to keep top of mind today, is that we're talking about social impact, and the role that social impact plays on the bottom line of an organization, in all organizations, and not just corporate organizations, smaller organizations, community organizations. And it really is about creating that shared value. Organizations that have good and strong corporate social responsibility programs. And from an Africa perspective, and from a South African perspective, we know we can't do business if it doesn't have the greater good of everybody in the ecosystem at heart. So I think from that perspective, regardless of all the ABCs and IABCs and CSGs and CSRs and ISEs and all those kind of things, what's really important is that we're talking about impact, social impact, and how do we engage successfully to drive real change and real transformation in our communities.
So, Karin, talking about social impact, what is the thing that is the most important for you around social impact, especially because you're a communicator?
So it means that there's got to be a positive effect, right? If you look at an organization in an ecosystem, if you can just imagine the organization that you're working for, the company that you're working for, the project that you're working on, everything that you do has an effect on the people in your organization or around your organization. We talk a lot about this in the extractive industries. It's very prevalent in the extractive industries because especially mines and manufacturing organizations have a big impact on communities, on external communities. So you want to really make sure that whatever you do leaves the people in your ecosystem in a better space. And you can only do that when you engage with them, when you get them engaged, when you do thorough research and really make sure that the methodologies that you apply into your operations have a good effect. And I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit about methods and programs and especially measurement as well. How do you know if you've got you're making a good impact on your ecosystem? I like to use the word ecosystem because it describes internal, external, all the stakeholders around whatever it is that your organization, what the purpose of your organization is.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Is there
it's about the positive effect.
Is there a success story that you can share with us that shows this impact that you are talking about?
A success story?
Yes.
There's many success stories. So I've you mentioned that I've my roots are in development communication. So as a young person, straight out of school, I was still studying, and I worked at a community foundation in the Northwest Province. And there I learned very quickly that you have to meet people where they are. If you want to move people, if you want to transform people, you've got to meet them where they are. And Janine, who's the expert on ABCD here today, she's going to tell us a lot more about it. But I use the ABCD methodology from a very young age when they were piloting it in South Africa way back in the early 2000s, 25 years ago. And the success stories, and I can recite them over and over. There's hundreds of them that I can talk about. normal people in communities realizing that, you know, they've got more than they thought they had. You know, changing a mindset, empowering people into a space of being able to create instead of being, you know, looking at themselves as not having anything or being disempowered and disabled in a sense. So I'm going to leave the case study to Janine. I know she's got something really exciting to tell us. But yes, I've seen throughout my career over the past 25 years wonderful things, how people have transformed their own lives and and lives around them through small interventions that organizations have done to empower people and to make sure that the impact that they have on these people is of a positive nature.
Yeah, thank you. That's it's good to hear that we also keep track of these things, you know, and it's been there for a very long time. We just maybe need to speak about it a little more, right?
Absolutely.
So that gives me a very good bridge into Janine's conversation. Janine, Carlina's now touched on ABCD as an asset-based citizen-led development. How do you see working in communities? How does the ABCD impact communities? And why is it important that we use models like ABCD?
Thanks, Anel, and thanks, Carlene, for the introduction. ABCD is asset-based citizen-led development, and that term was coined in the 80s in America by two men who were working in neighborhood work, helping people to focus on the gifts that they had available and do something for themselves in development. But actually, when we think about it, ABCD is really part of human DNA. You know, it goes way back to our ancestors, if you like. It's in our nature to try and do better for ourselves, to look at what we have. But I think what's happened over time is that people have been told, no, you are underdeveloped, or you are rural, or you are uneducated. So just sit down and we'll come and fix you and help you and bring things to you. And I think ABCD has so much value because, as Carlene says, it helps people to just realize that they have assets available. I did a workshop recently here up in Nottingham Road, and this one lady who's unemployed has been sitting at home feeling like she's absolutely despondent, has nothing that she can do. When we'd finished unpacking and looking at what she had around her, she just kept saying, I have so many assets. I have so many assets. And she was, you know, wanting to run out of the door and get started doing something for herself. And I think it's, as you said, Anel, it's that mind shift. We get stuck into this feeling of thinking that I haven't got anything, I need to sit and wait and be helped or be given something. And we just need to flip the switch. We need to help people to realize that that's not the truth. They need to, like we say in ABCD, start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can.
And also alluded to the case study that you have for us, and I'm quite excited to hear about that. How are we using ABCD to change our communities, but working from, because this is implemented by a corporate organization, and it's changing the way that they deal with their stakeholders. It's creating communication channels that wasn't there before. So would you please share with our audience today the SAPI Abashinshi case study?
Sure. Yeah, I think that was one of the most exciting ABCD projects that I've been involved in, because I think a lot of time people think if it's development work, it must be out in the bush and it must be, you know, small grassroots and so on. But I think when we get a corporate like SAPI interested in something like an ABCD program for their corporate social investment activities, it really can have exciting effects. So back in the early, 2014, a company was a development communication company called DevCom was approached by SAPI to say, we are having lots and lots of fires being started on purpose in the communities around our plantations. And we would like you to please go into these communities, run a couple of radio programs, send out a few posters, a few messages, and just tell the people to stop burning the forests. So DEFCON went out and did some baseline research and realized that the issue was far deeper than just a couple of radio adverts or posters. And they said, no, hang on a minute, you need to actually rethink the way that you as a corporate are existing in this ecosystem with these communities who are trying to eke out an existence, only some of whom might have a job with SAPI. So they started with a group of, there were 9 communities that they started in, and they got young people from 2 people from each of those communities. So there were 18 people that they brought into this Abashinshi program. And in Zulu, to Shinsha is to change. So if you are an Abashinshi, you are people who are like change agents, basically. And they trained, or we trained, the young Abashinshi as well as the SAPI management. And I think that is a key thing for corporates, is to not just hand over a project to development specialists or social workers or community workers and say, just, fix the problem. The key thing is getting corporates from management, from top management down throughout the company to be involved and to buy, to take ownership of this program. So we worked with both the managers, foresters, staff, right down to the community level with the Abashinshi, trained them in how to run community-based programs. They did various other programs, holiday programs for children, and then their role was to try and share this information through the communities. And within the first year, they had 60 ABCD projects happening in the community where they used the assets that had been identified in that community, starting veggie projects or preschools or small businesses, whatever it was. And in that first year, they had a total of 297 fires that had been started. Within a year, that number went down to 173, and the following year down to 33, because now people were getting interested and involved in doing something for themselves and starting small businesses. So within about 4 years, the program had gone up to 56 different communities throughout SAPI's areas, the whole of KZN right up to Mpumalanga. They had 115 Abashinshi on the program and hundreds of ABCD programs taking place where people felt like they had a purpose, they had something that they could do, and they could use a lot of what was available to them without having to rely on huge external donations and so on. So for me, the SAPI example is really a good example of corporate marrying the community development world and doing something which gives that social impact that Caroline spoke about.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I'm sure the case study, Janine, is available on the SAPI website, if I'm correct.
It is available, yes, it is, yeah.
Right. Yeah, so for the audience, you are welcome to go and have a read there. Caroline, maybe just jumping back to you quickly. The importance of measurement in this case, we've now heard a lot of stats, which is amazing that the SAPI and DEFCON team tracked the statistics around this project, because that's part of measurement. But what else is important when it comes to social impact and measuring social impact?
So it's a bit of a two-way street, right? And if we think about development communication as a stream in in strategic communication and driving shared value. So from a communication perspective, we as communicators know that communication is a value driver in any organization. So if you look at measurement from that perspective, we always say what gets measured matters and what gets counted counts. So if you don't do the measurement, if you don't do the research, in the beginning, if you don't know what it is that needs to shift, if you don't know what dial it is that you need to turn, then you won't know whether there's been impact. And if we talk about return on investment and we talk about effective strategies and that, those kind of things. You need to know what your baseline is. You need to know what it is that you need to move, what you need to transform. And that's why we are so adamant on measurement, because that's where you're going to see. And I think we've got a handout that we'll send after this as well.
Yes.
On different kinds of measurements and how can you measure, and how can you approach measurement in your strategies. But if you don't measure, you won't know if you're successful or if you're ever making any kind of impact.
Thank you. Janine, just a last bit on ABCD before we go to Kati. Is it normal, or is it used in a way that ABCD is used for socioeconomic indicators to understand? If I think about the model, it's got the leaky bucket, which is basically an income and expenses sheet, but in a picture format, right? So would companies use ABCD as a research methodology and not just a community development methodology?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, it has so many benefits because it uses all of those 5 sustainable livelihoods, the framework of the 5 assets. Just recently, I did a workshop with the biodiversity group here with SANBI, the South African National Biodiversity Institute, where they were looking at water security and the issues around environmental safety and so on here in KwaZulu-Natal. And we actually used the leaky bucket for them to see what money is coming into the sector and how can we better use that money. What is leaking out of the bucket? What are we wasting money on? How can we use the available funding that is available for, protecting water sources, building new dams, all that sort of a thing. So I think that's the beauty of ABCD, is that it's so diverse and it can go into rural settings, corporate settings, companies, organizations, even families. I've seen family members taking the leaky bucket concept and doing their own financial management, like you say, money in, money out. The one lady in Nottingham Road was shrieking with laughter when she'd finished doing her leaky bucket, because she said, I've just realized that I'm spending 84.99 every week on Weet-Bix. My family's eating Weet-Bix for breakfast, lunch, and supper. She said, I'm going to put a stop to this. So, right down to personal finances. It has relevance, and that's the beauty of the model.
Of the model. Brilliant. Thanks, Janine. Kati, I see that you are still at the airport. Thank you very much for joining us, even though you are traveling. I saw from our audience that registered that not a lot of us is actually working in the ESG space. Would you just shed some light on the ESG world? And what is it about, and what does your abbreviation stand for?
Thank you, Anel, and hello, everybody. Lovely to be here. Apologies for the background noise. That is the corporate world, is you travel and then you've got to find space. And this is the quietest place that I could find. So ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. And there's a big difference between ESG, sustainability, sustainable development, corporate social investment, and social impact. And in fact, today, the reason why we were in Joburg today is I explained this by means of a spectrum. So in a nutshell, ESG means all of these non-financial risks and opportunities which a company consider, which will most probably or likely affect the financial performance. They call it the prospects or the enterprise value of a company. So it's very financial materiality oriented. Also, analysts, shareholders, investors, potential investors, lenders, insurers, players in the capital markets use the ESG data of companies to evaluate companies, whether they want to invest in companies, whether they want to include the companies in their portfolio of assets, and to benchmark companies against one another. So you have a score, an environment score, you've got a social score, and you've got a governance score, or then you've got a combined score.
Okay.
And these ESG raters and rankers, there are hundreds of them. So when people ask me, what is my ESG score? I'm like, how long is your piece of string? Which one do you want to use? So you've got to be mindful of what you are benchmarking yourself against. And to Carlene's point, it is trying to quantify this very nebulous, qualitative, intangible idea of how do these risks in the environmental and social space potentially impact the financial viability of a company. So it's all about a risk-based approach. If you then move to the other side of the spectrum, and that's where Carlene and Janine operate, and that's also where I'm doing my research and where we are talking with a lot of clients, is social impact. So you actually have in the corporate space called the Net Positive Group, which was founded in 2016. It's fascinating. A group of big corporates together working with the World Economic Forum. And in a nutshell, what they say is the purpose of a company is not to make profits. The purpose of a company is to give back more than they take. And they use the metaphor of your handprint must be bigger than your footprint, which personally I subscribe to. I think it makes a lot of sense, because if you as a corporate can be part of the solution to wicked problems or grand challenges like unemployment, inequality, social incohesion, climate change, extreme weather events, all of these big ticket items that we are grappling with to make the world a better place, right? Then I think this is such a valuable thing to do with your time and your nervous energy. And what I'm trying to figure out is how do you combine the quantitative and the qualitative aspects of the change that you are bringing about, because social impact is all about change, right? It's the effect that you have on other people. How do you pull this into a framework that is usable for the corporate space, the investment industry, so that they can pull it into their financial models and say, you know what, I like this. I can see the change that you are bringing about and I can measure it. It's all about the baseline. Carlene, I so agree with what you are saying. It's finding that baseline, being consistent, and then integrated reporting, sustainability reporting, which is a big thing in corporate lives, contribute to this. So maybe I'll leave it at that and we can take it further.
So do you think, Kati, that a model like ABCD, if I can link it back to Janine and what Carlene said, that communicators, development communicators, people working in this space, having a positive model like ABCD, will it have an impact in how the risk and the impacts from a corporate point of view is addressed? If you think about the stakeholders, a mine having communities around them, and using a model like ABCD, for example, to address the risks that the mine is facing, is that something that will add value to the corporate?
Huge amount of value. When I met Janine and when we had our preparatory discussions, I was so excited. I was like, yes, this is going to work like a charm. It's impactful. It's very important. And think about this. When you are a corporate, you need to tell a compelling story to your stakeholders. It's no different to any other entity in our ecosystem that we are in the greater value chain, right? And corporates are battling to identify what are the material matters that they should focus on. How do they communicate it? To whom do they communicate it? Why does it matter? And why people should listen to them? Think about the environment in which we are operating. There is so much information. It is death by information. The challenge is now not to get the information. The challenge is now to sift and identify the material information. How do you get people to listen to your story? How do you create a compelling narrative? And for me, again, it's a combination between the story, the process, the methodology, the methods that you've used, how you've gone about. I always talk about your method of madness, and then combining that with the metrics. So your unit of measure, the kiloliters of water that you've used or recycled, the amount of energy that's been transformed from fossil fuel based to renewable, the number of people that you've impacted in a specific way. And it's cause and effect, right? So your action will have multiple effects. And that's the challenge with social impact. It's really hard to do. And there's a difference between outputs, which are your products and services and waste, your outcomes, and then your impact. And that's where I believe corporates should be focusing on. And unfortunately, when you read their integrated reports, you look at their websites, you look at their communication, in my view, too many still focusing on the inputs. In other words, how much money do we get? Who cares? What difference does it make? What does the money do? What is the change that you bring about? That's what you want to understand. And also the products and services. Again, who cares? The question is, what difference does your product or your service make and your waste to the greater economy? And that for me is what's so important. So it's critical. It's critical.
I'm so glad that you've said that, especially because our audience members are all communicators, right? Katia, I want to quickly jump to Carleen. As a SCMP, Carleen, what is the things that you've just heard Katie say? If we communicate about our projects, you know, our community development projects, what is the thing that, I mean, we always try to tell the story, but it's an emotive story, right? It's about, this, especially in Africa, it's this poor young child that doesn't have food, you know, typical European way of looking at Africa. But what is it that you've heard that we should change from a communication point of view?
Anel, what's really important that Kati has said, and which I 100% agree with, is it's the narrative. What are we telling? And as communicators, we are responsible for making sure that the narrative that we develop, the story that we tell, creates that value. You'll remember I said in one of my previous comments as well, communication is a value creator in any organization. So whether you are speaking to you know, an internal stakeholder or an external stakeholder, investors, clients, community members, you know, whoever your audience is, as a communicator, it's your responsibility to make sure that what you communicate delivers that value. It creates that value for your audience as well as your organization. And that's the important thing. So it's, I mean, wonderful. We create beautiful infographics, we create beautiful videos, we do wonderful designs, we craft gorgeous reports, but if it doesn't bring home the message of what it is that we've actually done, then development practitioners like Janine, you know, people who are really putting in the hard work, they won't get the value from that. And that's the responsibility of communicators. And as a, you know, when I did my certification last year, it was very important for me to make sure that I know, you know, this is how we see world class, and this is how we describe global best practice. Is that you really create value through the message that you are crafting, through the narrative that you are developing. And I think that's where it comes to life. Yes, Kati.
Sorry, I had to just respond, and I was so FOMO-ish that I was not going to get the opportunity.
No, please
so
tell me.
I so agree with you, but what you have to keep in mind is that in the quest of telling a compelling story is that you've got to be mindful of greenwashing. So greenwashing is a big
Yes.
thing in the corporate world, to the extent now where many jurisdictions are considering or are in the process of implementing legislation and regulations to counter it. And this is
Yeah.
where corporates make statements. Normally it relates to environmental performance, but it could relate to your social performance, it could relate to your governance performance, to any performance, where you make a statement which is not factually correct. It's like overselling yourself. And that is also not a good thing, where you tell such a tantalizing story, when you dig a little bit deeper, you find, oh, this is actually not the case. So
Yeah.
how do you, it's like finding the Goldilocks spot. How do you tell a very good story? How do you take the good things that you are doing, putting that in a way that people can understand, that you target the right audience? Because your communication, as you know much better than I do, how you communicate to shareholders are different to employees, are different to business partners, to communities, to civil society, etc. In such a way that you don't oversell or undersell yourself.
Yeah. Kati, that's 100%. And as at the IABC, we have a code. We've got a code, and one of the very important things is ethics, right? So making sure that that your communicator abides by the global best practice standards, and one of the big pillars is obviously ethics. But apart from
Can't
that,
carry
as
you.
well,
Look, all the things
in
I'm
the-
holding. Come, I can hold
if
your hand.
you have if you
Good
have
job.
done research,
Okay, good
you've done
job.
proper
Good
research,
job. Okay, go.
then you've got the facts, and that's what you report on, and that's what you communicate. So, and that's why I'm very pro research, and making sure that it's not just qualitative, that there's some quantitative as well, so that your narrative can be supported by facts.
Janine, linking it to you quickly, from a practitioner that's in the field, that is hands-on, listening to what Kati says from a corporate point of view, would you change anything in how you develop the projects or work with the community to align more to the standards and needs from a corporate when it comes to reporting?
Sure, I think that's a tough one, because there's that constant tension when you in a corporate setting, is you've got budgets to follow, you've got deadlines to meet, you've got things that need to be done by a certain time. And I think one of the challenges with ABCD is that it's not predictable. You know, if you're doing development in the old-fashioned way, you've got the money, you go into a community and you say, we are building 15 preschools and they need to be done by December. You build those schools, you take your pictures for your annual report, and you're done. But with the ABCD, you're saying to people, let's look at what we have, and let's look at the gaps that are in your community, and how do you think we can mobilize these existing assets and do something that you would appreciate. And they may come up with something completely different and say, we don't need preschools, we actually want dams and water sources. So I think that is where you need to be absolutely upfront from the beginning. If you're going to work with the corporate, you've got to say to them, we don't know what the outcome is going to be. And that's not a nice message for a corporate, because they are, they have to follow procedures and budgets and deadlines and so on. So I think that's where, but then it helps to be upfront, because you're not selling them a lie by saying, oh yes, we can do this within 8 months. You need to be upfront, and also you need to say to community members that they might be working with, that we need to sit down together, and it does need to be a bit of pressure from the community side, that let's come up with something so that we can work with this corporate and we can get things done. But yeah, it's a constant tension, and I think that's why, in a way, a lot of corporates feel like handing out a check or just doing the kind of traditional CSI project. It's actually easier, but it's not as sustainable.
Kati, is there any advice from a corporate point of view on how to deal with this? Because there's always going to be this tension, that Janine is talking about. And how do we go about that? And how can communicators be almost the bridge or the conduit between those two worlds?
Such a good question, Anel. Janine, when you were talking, I was just nodding and I was like, yes, because having been in the corporate for a very long time, I understand that. And also now moving in this space, I appreciate both worlds. And this is where sustainability comes in. When you understand sustainability, and if you understand integrated thinking and integrated reporting, which should be part and parcel of a corporate, or a bigger corporate, is that you appreciate the difference between short-term, medium-term, and long-term thinking. And the things that we are doing and our aspirations are traditionally of a long-term nature. The big change takes time. You've got to respect the process, and you have to appreciate that certain things are not going to be implemented in a one-year cycle when you do your reporting. So I agree with you, Janine, be upfront. And it's the same as when you do research, right? You set out with your research, you've got your research question, you've got your rationale and your problem statement, and then you can't preempt because you've got to do the hard yards. You've got to understand what that means. And then invariably you come to a different conclusion and then a result than what you thought you were going to. I mean, that's the purpose of research, right? If you have the answer, why do this? If you had the answer, why ask the community? The community must tell you. It's not for you to tell them what their problems are. I think that's so disrespectful. It's just like, who are you? Don't swoop in and tell me how I'm going to solve your problems. No, work together, co-create, listen, and listen first and then speak. I think that's a problem in corporate is people think they've got the answer. And having been a company secretary, I was expected to have all the answers, which is hard because you don't. Nobody has. I'm sorry. You can be as clever as a twin. It's not going to happen. So just have a little bit of respect for other people and respect the process and just calm down. Nothing is so serious or so important. Just calm down. That's what I think.
I think we have to quote that. Kati said, calm down, corporates. Just calm down.
Yeah, this is wees kalm for my. Wees kalm.
I just want to quickly say to our audience members, if there's anybody that has a questions, I see that Camilla posted something we'll quickly delve into in a bit, but you're welcome to post it so that we can ask our experts on your behalf. Just something else that we quickly need to touch on is the stakeholders that we work with, we engage with, we report to and on. How do we ensure that the sustainability of community development initiatives, Kati, what is the role of stakeholder engagement in all of this?
I think that you can't have a successful business if you don't understand who your stakeholders are. And if you don't know what their needs are, what their expectations are, their legitimate expectations, their interests. And that's the basis of everything. How can you engage with someone if you don't know how you impact them and how they impact you? And it's quite a process. So when you have your strategy, you have a certain worldview or a perspective, and then you engage with your different groups. And different groups will have different needs. And it's difficult because you've got to find, again, that space where most people can live with it. It's never going to be ideal. But I always say, if you can find an activity which has the biggest impact or the most benefit for most people, then I think that's okay. But there are so many different ways of doing that. And, you use your matrix. How many people do you impact? what is the level of your impact, and you can measure it. And there are so many cool methodologies of doing that. But listen to what people need, and it's all about the trade-off. So
brilliant. I was thinking about understanding people, what you were saying about your stakeholders, understanding the people, and ABCD as a methodology with a research element does that for me so well, because you engage with your community on ground level, but you get information from them without them filling out a survey. So is the fact that let's call it community-based research, for the lack of a better term at the moment. Katie, if we use ABCD as a research methodology and access that information, but it's not necessarily number orientated. I mean, we can put it in a graph, we can present it in a way that, you know, statistically it shows, but it's always going to be a narrative. It's a conversation that we get through pictures. How does that impact when we're talking about measurement? How does that impact the corporate's point of view on the legitimacy of that stats?
I think corporates understand that, because if you have a look at the communications that corporates publish, whether it's on their websites, their annual reports, whatever it is, they often use case studies. And case studies are narrative by definition. And you want a rich narrative, you want a deep narrative, and the words matter, and understanding what people are saying and why it matters to them. And certain things are just very difficult to quantify. We can try, but there's a reason why it's qualitative, because it's inherently immeasurable. And I believe that because something is not quantifiable does not mean it's less important. I actually think that the most important things in life are very hard to measure. And because it's hard to measure, people don't like it. And because it doesn't fit into a model, a financial model, and you don't know what to do with it. I mean, think about it. A number is impersonal. It's like 2, 4, 7, 5.8. And but emotions and intent, that's a different story.
Both it doesn't have a space.
Yeah, both is important, and you need to celebrate both.
Arlene, I see you.
No, I want to give an example of that. Coming back to Janine's case study of SAPI, right? Where if you're talking about those intangibles, when it was, I think it was the 2021 riots, right? Where our economy really suffered a big blow in all aspects. SAPI's forests weren't touched at all.
Yeah.
Because the community protected it. Now that's something that you can't predict. So it's not a risk factor that you can monitor. But the social alliance that SAPI built through coming alongside, you know, building that relationship with the communities around their operations, protected that organization to an immense degree. And that's the thing, it's you can't quantify that. That really is that's the shared value that I'm talking about, where if done right, it can have a much bigger reward on your organization than you can ever really predict. Yes. And it's where the communities and it's where your ecosystem actually becomes your advocate, and they become your, you know, they become your sustainable partner, because they're giving you the social license to operate.
Exactly. Going into what we now see, our businesses are starting to plan with Africa Day on the 25th of May and Nelson Mandela Day on the 18th of July, and all these initiatives that we are planning. What is the elements of development that we can link, that we've learned today, that we just discussed, that we can advise to add to the strategy on these events that communication practitioners deal with and plan?
Yes, so it's interesting how CSI usually falls into the communication department, or even in the marketing in the marketing department. There's some marketing funds allocated, and we're going to take a couple of nice pictures and hand out shoes or do a soup kitchen or whatever the case may be. So I think the important message that we want to bring across today is that when you do have funds to invest in your corporate social responsibility program, make sure there's impact. Make sure that you know what it is, what is the positive effect that you need or that you want to drive in your community, in your ecosystem. And when we talk community, it's not just it's I want to say it's not the township down the road, it's your community, it's the people that you connect with on a daily basis. You've got a community inside of your organization and outside of your organization. So I think what's really important is that we plan in a way that we can ensure that there's value and that there's sustainability, and that we leave people in a better state than what we found them in. It's a personal philosophy of mine in my own life, with everybody I meet, to make sure that I leave them better than what I found them. So participating and contributing in a state where it really has a positive impact on the people that you connect with.
And I think also as we link it to the measurement part, and I'm excited about the handout that we will share with our audience, but to make sure that it's measured in a way that is not just, Kathy, what did you say? It has to say what it is that you are actually doing, and not just the fluff. Right?
The greenwashing. That's what I was referring to.
Yes. So, Carlene, in the IBC, the Midas Touch, I think is the document that's called, and that it outlines objectives and goals and all the inputs and outputs, and my head always turns when we write strategies. So that is a very valuable document, and something to remember, audience members. What other kinds of resources can you maybe think of that is available to help us with this kind of planning, from a measurement point of view or a strategic point of view? Putting you on the spot there.
It's fine. I think I can answer it from a just from a little bit of an experience perspective. So when you want to incorporate development communication, and I mean we're talking in a communication context here, there's a couple of things that first you need to build a business case. You need to know what it is that you need to do and why. Why do you need to do it? Why is it going to be good for the business? Because that's ultimately your role in your organization, is to serve your organization, right? And then the second thing really is to conduct the research. Like Kati said, ask your audience, ask your target, né? What is it that you need? How can we make a difference in your life? And then you can design your strategy. And there's lots of documents on the web as well around the theory of change and how you can do that. And then the implementation, and the ABCD methodology really is a very good implementation model. We use it all the time as well. It really is. It's a transformative process where you really change people's minds because you change their perspective. And so it's a very effective tool to use for implementation. And then monitor and evaluate, and you'll have that in your in your strategy, when you do your theory of change, you'll know what you need to measure again once you've completed and once you've implemented. So yeah, I mean, there's and in the handout, there's also some tips, and I think there's some links as well to some resources on the web that can help you to link to the best suited tool or methodology that you need. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Carleen. Ladies, just as closing remarks as we are hitting the hour, if you are standing in front of a communicator in an organization, what is the thing that you would like them to know? Janine, let's start with you.
I suppose for me as a community-based person and as an ABCD practitioner, communication is fantastic when you're getting a message across, but the other part of communication is to listen. And I think that is often, you know, people feel like I have to say something, I have to give a message across, but you actually need to listen. And you know, the very first asset that we look at in ABCD is the connecting asset of just sitting, listening to people, asking them about their lives, hearing about them, finding out who they are, finding out what makes this community tick before you even start looking at any other kind of asset. So I think listening is such a critical thing. And you know, there's that little meme that says, if you take the letters of the word listen and you jumble them around, it comes out with silent. And I think and that's, you know, part of communication is being quiet and listening to somebody else. So that would be my key message.
Brilliant. Thanks, Janine. Kati, so closing remarks, same question to you.
I think I would just concur with Janine. That's absolutely true. You need to listen. And the other thing that I would add is be mindful of other people's perspectives and worldviews. You are not always the right one, and your view is not always the more superior one. Maybe there are other people who's got deeper insights, and I love changing my mind. So, yeah, you know, when you hear something, you're like, interesting. So we're not always right.
Thank you. Carleen, what would you say?
I agree 100% with both Janine and Kati as well. There's you know, the responsibility of communicators is to make sure that we foster dialogue, and meaning two. You know, it's a two-way street. It's not just talking; it's listening as well, and making sure that we foster that connection and build that bridge. And yes, bias can be a big limiting factor into really understanding when you have to. So check your bias at the door, and yes, be there with an open heart.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for our experts today. We have come to the end of our conversation, and I just wanted to continue. But thank you very much for all your insights. Thank you for taking the time and spending it with us, especially Kati there on the airport. It's been brilliant having your insights from a corporate point of view and bringing some light into the ESG space. If there's anybody that has any questions, I don't see any on our chat, but you're welcome to reach out to us via the IABC Africa LinkedIn page. The link to this webinar will also be there for you to have a look at the recording again later. And I bid you a fond farewell. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks, Anel.
Thank you, everybody. Keep well.
Thank you.
Have a good afternoon. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Still in the group?
said.
Still a big buzzard for South Africa.